Hi everybody, thank you for joining us today. This is going to be the first of 11 demonstrations for the IPPS-A Business Intelligence team. Today we're going to be building an ad hoc query in this first of 11 demonstrations. So in each of these presentations, we'll give a little bit of background on what it is we're building. We'll show you a legacy report, and then we'll construct, while you watch in real time, the equivalent of that exact same report for the current R3 build. In this initial report that we're going to build, it's going to be a flag report that's going to show the counts of flags, the counts of soldiers' flags, and it will be broken out by a flag type so that you can see it across multiple different NPCs. And the background here is that leadership needs to know the count of soldiers that have the different types of SFPA flags, as it has a very important impact on readiness across units, as well as across the different personnel classes of units. And we will show that here in the query that we're going to build. And so we'll go ahead and take a look at the next slide, which is the legacy report that this is modeled after. So as you can see here, you've got your types of flags there along the left side of this legacy report. And then you've got three sections in the middle, one for enlisted, one for officer, and one for warrant. And then what the totals are on the far right. And since this report was done in September of 2019, you're going to see the numbers for August and then the numbers for September, which at that moment in time was current. And then for each pair of numbers for August and September, you've got the positive or negative. Did it go up or did it go down since the previous month? And then what the percent change was. So in the case of this legacy example, obviously numbers going up, since these are SFPA flags, is a bad thing. So those appear in red. Going down is a good thing. Those show up in green. So you've got your month-to-month change across enlisted, officer, and warrant. They're in the middle of the chart. And then as you go from top to bottom, it's all the different types of flags that the counts are pertaining to. So this is what the final result is going to look like. We're giving you a peek ahead. Basically, you've got your enlisted, officer, and warrant towards the right side of the screen, just like you had in the legacy example, except also what we are going to do is marry it up with the BIR3 data model that enables us to break results out across traditional Army units, division, brigade, battalion, so you can see the counts broken out as well there, exactly which units had these counts of these different types of flags. So with that, I'll cut it over to Ricky, and he's actually going to build this for you from square zero.
Thank you. Okay, again, this is the final result that we're going to see. What we're doing, excuse me, is that we have the data broken out by NPC, and we've added our hierarchy here. But we're going to also add assigned strength here, for we have assigned strength for September 2019 and assigned strength for August of 2019. Because we are going to be comparing two different snapshots of data, what we're going to do is create an analysis using our historical subject area. So I'm going to create a new analysis here. And when the subject areas come up, we have our current subject area and we also have a historical. I'm going to choose a historical subject area here. The very first thing you want to do when pulling from a historical subject area is to choose the correct snapshot. So our snapshots, we have a snapshot ID. And if we look at that data, right now it goes all the way back from 2019 in January, and it goes, pretty much all of the data that we collect. So what you want to do first is create a filter, and we're going to be looking at September 30th. So our snapshots, we have two snapshots per month. The first is on the 15th of the month, and the second is on the last day of the month. So this will be 2019-09-30. Now, I don't actually want the snapshot ID in the report, so I'm going to delete that report, that column. The next thing that we're going to do is add our hierarchy. So in the hierarchy, there are multiple hierarchy. We have multiple hierarchy that you can choose from. And so what we're going to do is choose our DIRCON hierarchy. So we want a filter for the DIRCON hierarchy. This is case sensitive, so you do want this in uppercase. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So, and again, we don't want this in our report, so we're going to delete that. But now we have two filters, one for our snapshot date and one for the hierarchy that we want. Okay, so now I'm going to actually start adding the hierarchy. I'm going to start with component. And we actually have the component code and the component description. We want to use the component description. Now, if I look at this data, you see we have active Army, National Guard, and the reserves. We actually right now are only going to look at the National Guard data. So I'm going to filter this and only choose the National Guard. Okay. Now, the next that we're going to do is pull in our division. We have our division description, then our brigade, the brigade description, then our battalion, and we have our battalion description. And if I look at the data now, we see I have component, division, brigade, and we have to scroll here. So if we don't want to scroll, we can come here and choose content paging. And now we can see the entire thing. So I have component. Actually, this is a very long heading, so I'm going to change this heading. I'm going to come here, edit formula, do custom headings, and I'm going to just call it component. Now it doesn't take up all the room here. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do is we want to pull in the MPC. So we have a field called MPC. And it ended here. If we look at that data, the data for the MPC is an E or an O or a W. So we actually don't want this. What we want is the words. So we're going to put in a formula here, and we're going to go ahead and say custom heading here, leave it as MPC. We're going to say case, and this MPC field, when the value is an E, then we want to type in enlisted. When the value is an O, then officer. When W, then warrant. End. So now you see we have our enlisted officer warrant. We will see that there's some that are missing data, so we're going to filter this to say that we only have the ones that have data. So we're going to filter out and only select the values that we want to display in the report. And now, this way we don't have any blanks now. We only have those values that we're reporting on. Now, this is a report of flags, and flags are a type of restriction. So what we're going to do is come to restrictions here, and we are going to pull a restriction type of F here. So here's a restriction flag type, and we're going to do a filter, and we want this to be F. And again, we don't want this in the report, so I'm going to delete this. And what we do want is the flag item code. But when we look at this data, we see that these are, it says flag and then the code. So flag J, flag K, flag M. We only want the final letter here, which is the actual code that we're looking for. So we're going to change this. We're going to do another formula. We're going to call this flag code. And we're only going to pull the right character, so that one character on the right. So when we do that, and we look at the data again, now we have the flag code, just that final character, JKMP. Okay, we now want the actual reason, and that would be the restriction item description. I'm going to change the column header here and just call this the flag reason and all flags. So now we have the flag code and the reasons, and we have it broken down by the NPC. But we don't have the counts yet. So we want to add the counts. So what we're going to do is look at the begin date here. So I'm going to pull in begin date. And this one is going to be for August of 2019. And we're going to say, what we're trying to do is get a count now of the flags for August. So we're going to do a sum here. And what we're going to do is use a case statement. And we're going to say, case, when the begin date is less than or equal to date 2019-08-31. So if it began before the end of August, and we're going to go back to restrictions, and we're going to look at the end date. So if the end date is after date 2019-08-01, if the end date is greater than the 1st of August, so that means that this was active during August. But there's also the case, well, what we're going to do here is say then 1 else 0 end. So what this does is it gives a value of 1 to something that was active during August. And if it wasn't active during August, then it gives it a value of 0. And then we sum these up. But if something is currently, if it hasn't ended and it's still active, then the end date will be null. So what we're going to do is do an and here. So we're going to say, we're going to do an or. So if this date is before August 1st, or if this date is null, then a 1, else 0. And that will give us the August 19. If I look at this data now, and now I have data for these values for August. I'm going to do the exact same thing for September. I'm actually going to copy that. So if I take this formula, copy it, I'm going to use this begin date field to create another field here and edit that with this formula. And we'll change the dates. I'm going to change the title. This will be September 19. And instead of August 31st, this will be September 30th. There's no 31st in September. And this will be September 1st. And now we have values for August and September. So now we have September and then August. So now what we're going to do is look for the difference between the two. So here we see 28 in August, 39 in September, 3 in August, 5 in September. So we want to see what the difference is and then what the percentage of that difference is. So I want to use the same column. So I need to add a column here. And I'm going to edit formula. So this is going to be the delta between the two. So I'm just going to call this one plus minus. That's the delta. And then I am going to delete this. And this will be simple. We can use this column button here and just pull existing columns. We're basically going to say September minus August, and that'll be the difference. So we're just going to pick September here, and we get that formula. I'm going to say minus, and then August. And we have that formula. So one formula minus the other formula. And when I do that, now we see the results here. I have a difference of 11, a difference of 2, a difference of 1 here, so, and whatnot. Okay, and then we want to get the percent of that change. So I'm going to add that same column here, and I'm going to call this one just percent. And what we want to do for percent, again, we're going to pull these columns here. We're just going to say what that difference was, divide that by September times 100. And right now, this delta and September, August are integers. For percent, we want to use decimal points. We're at 2 decimal places. So the first thing we're going to do is cast this as a float. So we're going to say cast, and then we pull in that delta, and we say as float. That will allow us decimal places. And then we're going to divide that by September times 100. So that creates the formula. But we need to tell OBIE that this is a percent. So we're going to come to the data format, override the default, which is a number. And we're going to say this is a percentage. And then we want 2 decimal places. So now if I come and look at this data, we now have the percent of the change. So it's a 28% change from August to September, 40% change, and whatnot. We see that some rows didn't have any data, so we can actually filter these rows out. And we can say for September, let's only see data where this report is for September, so let's only see data where the value is greater than 0. And now we should only see the ones that have data. So now we have filtered out those rows with no data. And we're going to also do here is add assigned strength. So I'm going to search for assigned strength. And we have assigned strength. I'm going to pull that here. Now this assigned strength here is going to be for September 30th. If we want to see the assigned strength for another period, so I'm going to go ahead and call this one assigned strength September 19. And then we want to pull assigned strength in again. And this one we'll use for August. So this will be assigned strength for August of 19. And what we're going to do here is actually use a formula to tell it to pull from a different snapshot. And this is the formula. So because our snapshots, again, we take a snapshot on the 15th and on the end of the month. This is saying that if the snapshot we're looking at is the 15th, go back 1 snapshot date to the end of the month. And if this is the end of the month snapshot, go back 2 snapshots to get the end of the previous month. So we're just going to stick this in here. And now, if we look at our results, when this comes back, we now will have assigned strength. Now we actually want this here, and that here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we have the MPC, we have the flags broken down, but the original report had these grouped by the MPC. So what we're going to do is create a pivot table. And when you do that, it creates a pivot table down here at the bottom. So we can get rid of this table here that we've created. And again, we're going to make this content paging so we can see the entire thing. And what we're going to do then is edit this report. And we want to say that our MPC is going to be our measure labels. So we grab, let me close this. We're going to grab MPC, put that here as our measure label. And what you see is it sticks MPC at the top here. We have enlisted, officer, and warrant. So then it gives us the values for the enlisted and the values for the officer and the values for the warrant. Also right here, so we can move some of these around. Brigade, we have component, brigade, let's move this here. And battalion, remove. So now we have our hierarchy, then the flags, and then the data. Right now, we also have assigned strength that's also divided by NPC. If that was not the goal, we can move that out of the measures over here, and then move this out of the measures as well. So now assigned strength will just be broken down by flag instead of by flag and by NPC. And I'm actually going to move this while we're at it. So depending on how you want your data, if you want the assigned strength broken out by the NPC, then you leave that here in the section for measures. But if you don't, then you move it back over to this section. So, and here we go. So now we have our hierarchy, our flags, code and reasons, and then we have the assigned strength just broken down by flag. And then just the flag counts broken down by enlisted officer and warrant. So this is our report right now, but what we're going to do is add a total here. So the total column, we're adding it after the columns. So now we get a total here. So for this row, we have August 28 plus 5 equals to 33. And the September, the 39 plus 6 gives you the 45. And then the delta total, and then the percent totals as well. And so I'm going to click done here. Now, what we can also do here, if I'll show you the entire report, we can add the formatting. So for the delta, if it's higher, then we can make that red. If it's lower, we can make it green. So what we'll do is go back to criteria. So we'll come to the delta column, and we'll say column properties, and we go to conditional format. And what we'll do is add this delta column, and we'll say when it is greater than 0, meaning positive, then we're going to change the color of the font to a red. And we'll say if this delta column is less than 0, it's a negative change, then we change the color of the font to a green color. And we're only doing if it's greater than or less than 0. If it's the same, then we're not putting a conditional format for that. And if I look at that result, then here, this is a positive change. So you see green, you see red. And I don't know if we have any negative changes. Right now, everything is a positive. But we can also do this for the percent column. So we'll go back. And we go to the percent column, conditional format. And we go to the percent column. If this is greater than 0, then we make it a green color, a red color. And if the percent is less than 0, then we make this a green. And now if we look at the results, so now we have both the delta and the percent formatted based on the increase or decrease in value. And it looks like all of these are gains, or they stay the same. I don't see any negative values here. Okay, so this is the report that we've done, that we've added the hierarchy and the assigned strength. Now, if we want to make it look exactly the same as the legacy report, we can just remove these extra columns. So I'm going to go ahead and do that so you can see it as the legacy report. So we're going to remove component. and division and brigade and battalion and assigned and assigned. So now we're only left with the original. So now we just have a report of the flags for the entire National Guard and what the enlisted officer warrant and the totals were. And there's one more thing the original had. We can add totals to the bottom here. So we added totals to appear after each of the columns. So here are the columns, totals after the columns. We can also put totals after the rows. So if I scroll down here to rows and put a total after the row and click done. And now we will see totals at the end. So what we did just now is we specifically pulled values, or we made this report for September and August of 2019. That's because we were replicating the legacy report, but this doesn't have to be for these two specific dates. We can also build this just to be for the current month and the previous month, or you can pick whatever time period you want, because we are using our historical snapshot. When you go and choose snapshots, we do have snapshots for the current month. And you can just choose that. We also have a previous time period metric. So if I were, instead of going by the previous snapshots, you could do this filter, and that's when you would choose, you could say previous quarter, previous snapshot, current snapshot. So we actually have some, you could just say current snapshot, and then you can pick just your current snapshot. And then each time that you ran this report, if you ran it this month or ran it next month or in 2 months, it would always pull just the data for your current snapshot. So you wouldn't have to constantly go through and edit these. But since we were doing these specifically for these dates, we went through and edited those and chose the snapshot. Okay, so that concludes that report of the flags by MPC. Thank you.